So welcome everybody to this year's budget summary. I think in short, we all love, all tax nerds love the budget, but not so much clients. So we thought we just give a quick overview of exactly what happened in the budget. So just a really quick disclaimer. You should seek specific tax legal advice, and this is just information. It doesn't take your personal situation into consideration. Then I'd like to introduce my co-host today, Stuart, our lovely CEO. Stuart, say hi.
Hello, everyone. Always good to talk about tax. This time, we'll talk about the future of tax. It's always interesting to see what the government has in store for us. And we spent the past few hours distilling this for you, and hopefully you could get some good insights here.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. So hi, I'm Tanya, also from Fullstack, and we're looking forward to doing this with you. In summary, with regards to the budget, we were all pretty disappointed. I don't know if anybody else has a different feel, but a few of the key measures or a few of the things that did come out of the budget was that they are working on a framework for made in Australia. So they're encouraging private investment into net zero transformation. And we're hoping that what that will do is boost the industry for those who work in that environment or who focus on sustainability. SMEs, there was really very, very, very little in the budget for them. It's basically the energy bill relief, a whole $325, and the instant asset write-off of $20,000 was extended by another year. But as I said, not much else. Some of the key measures, mostly for individuals, stage 3 tax cuts, energy bill relief, rent assistance, the maximum has increased, and the pharmaceutical co-payment has been frozen. Then for foreign residents, there's a little bit of changes to CGT on certain assets, and the modified 365-day test has been announced, not legislated just yet, but it has been announced. So we've got a bit of information around this. And Stuart, did you want to take the audience through these?
Sure. Yeah. So, for the past few years, we've been enjoying the benefit of the 20K instant asset write-off. What is that? It's basically where you're able to deduct, an expensive piece of hardware or even a cheaper vehicle outright, as opposed to claiming it over several years. So, the government's allowed us to claim it for yet another year. So include that as part of your tax planning up until June next month. And there's you can imagine this is a voter grab, I think, helping subsidize the costs of everyone's electricity bills. SMEs, they get a little bit more than the individuals here, $325, and that's applied directly onto the power bill in your quarterly installments. And of course, if you've got staff who might be thinking about taking paid parental leave, we certainly do at Fullstack. It's good to know that, there'll be super added on top to help lighten the load. And I guess this is in support of their initiative to also boost up the paid parental leave up to 26 weeks. It's currently 18 weeks. Yeah, cool. There's also a mandate, I guess, for, to manufacture more things in Australia. So we're seeing a lot more overall funding applied to the sector. If you're developing new clean energy technologies, solar manufacturing, there's certainly $1 billion projects already announced, one up in the Hunter. Then it's good to know that the government has your back, at least for this industry.
So clean energy technology, solar manufacturing, that's definitely an area that we recommend people look into if they're in the ideation phase still. 1.4 billion as an investment is quite great. It is over a decade, but still, it's where the government wants to spend their money. There's also been a decrease, a very slight decrease in the individual tax rates. So basically the top line changed by $10,000 and it sort of filters through, but the tax savings are unfortunately, mostly for the high income earners, not so much the low income earners. Then, like I just said, there's reduced tax rates for high income earners. So from more than 146,000, you'll have income tax from July. But this is lower than what they previously announced, which was around $9,000. It's resident CGT and how that's being treated. So what the government's hoping to do is to give more clarity around what will be taxed in Australia and how will it be taxed in Australia. So they've clarified and broadened the types of assets that the resident pay CGT on, and they've amended that test. Most of it was to sort of streamline things. And any foreign residents that now dispose of shares exceeding 20 million have to notify the ATO prior to the transaction. So for those who are familiar with how it works when you sell a house and you have to do that application beforehand, this will be similar. The bracket of 20 million, I'm guessing, is risk and versus benefit, the big fish at this stage. But as we've seen with other measures implemented, we could probably expect it in future to trickle down and that value become less and less where you have to apply prior to that. Then the reason why they're doing it is because Australia basically wants to tax people that do things that are related to Australia. So they want their pound of flesh. And everything that is being done, and we've seen a lot of things around the compliance side of the ATO. The government's investing quite a lot of money in upping compliance, reducing fraud. So data matching has been a thing for a really long time. And now especially we see the government actually throwing a lot of money at it. So that's another industry where if you're working in that industry, that's where the government will be spending a lot of their money. And I think the goal with this is reduce the number of man hours required from the ATO and kind of make DIY and the automated systems to pick that up. There is consultation going to be open, so we would be able to have a discussion and submit papers and arguments against this. So highly recommend go and read the legislation on that and reach out to us if there's something that us as Fullstack that you think we should add to our submission. Then digital, again, a lot of money going to digital IDs. So I think in Australia, there's a bit of a fear around giving away your digital identity and not and sort of secret squirreling your identity. And it looks like the government now wants to try and change the way that people are reporting things economically. Now, if I put my tinfoil hat on, that is so that they can track everything a bit more and so that they can get the information of the economic transactions that are happening to combat black economy and fraud, all of that. But from a developer or from a potential vendor of the government, I'd say it's probably a good thing if you're in digital ID, if that's your playground. The government will be focusing on that quite significantly. So they're also improving the MyGov ID regime that's currently in work. And of course, when we talk about digital IDs or digital anything, we can't get away from digital assets and payments. So they've budgeted quite a few, so $7.5 million to develop legislation and regulate digital assets for DeFi and tokenization. So cryptocurrency environment seems to be a big interest of the ATO in recent years. And we can understand why, but just a thought that if that's your playground, again, there's some money being thrown at it. And then the regulatory framework for payment service providers, such as digital wallets, they're also working on new regulatory frameworks so that there's better control over that. Then some of the tax compliance programs have been extended. So when I sat through the budget and sort of read some summaries afterwards, the biggest thing I got from this budget was they're trying to prevent fraud and make sure that people are actually compliant. It's been a focus of them covertly for a while, but now they're actually throwing a lot of money at it. So they're extending the personal income tax compliance program by 1 year. So they've budgeted to extend this program by 2 years, and the tax avoidance program is extended by 2 years as well. Then they're putting $187 million into the counter fraud strategy. It's a new strategy that they're working to implement, but it's basically to mitigate fraud against tax and super. So we're thinking it would probably be something electronic. And we're hoping that what that will do is minimize the amount of funds that are lost due to fraud and those not paying their taxes like they should be. The ATO has also changed the notice period that they have to let you know that they're retaining your BAS refund. So if there was something that they didn't like about your BAS refund, they now have 30 days to notify you. They'll still pay interest if it's a legitimate refund after review for anything that's over 14 days, but they now have 30 days. If you're in an industry or in a business where your BAS refund, you sort of live for that refund to come, bear that in mind that you can't really hold them to the 14 days anymore. They now have 30 days to just notify you whether or not they're going to hold that cash. And it will be effective from the start of the first financial year after the royal assent. So meaning if it doesn't get into legislation before the 30th of June, then it will likely only start the year after. Some existing measures have also changed. So some measures that were tabled or sort of announced in previous budgets have changed. This one's for the good. So there was a scheme where tax debt were put into a bucket saying it was uneconomical to pursue. So for the ATO, they said it's going to cost us more to recover this debt than this debt is actually worth. And they've sort of written off the debt, kind of put it on hold. And they didn't have the discretion. Once you get a future refund, that old debt is resurrected and your refund then goes against it. And now the legislation is changing to allow for a discretion for them not to use the refund against the old tax debt if it was deemed uneconomical to pursue prior to 1 January 2017. And this only applies to individuals, small businesses, and not-for-profits. The Part 4A anti-avoidance scheme has also gotten a little bit of a change. It's basically just a date change, but it will apply to the income years commencing on or after the day that the legislation receives royal assent. And that's regardless of whether the scheme was entered into before that date. Now, as you can see, there isn't much. There's a lot of assistance for individuals, quite a bit of focus on individuals. And we've thought that we keep this business related. As I said, there's not much to announce. That the crux of the situation, the budget was pretty meh. But if there's anything that we can do to help, feel free to reach out to us. We may work with entrepreneurs who change the world. And thank you for joining us.